Hey, who's running this meeting?
Bill is.
Craig is. Craig's the chair.
Oh, yeah, Craig can.
Hi, Craig.
Good. Hi guys, how you doing?
Oh, it's him.
Can't get my ear pods to work, so I can hear you on the microphone here a little bit.
We can hear you.
Okay, good, thanks. Are you guys ready?
We're ready.
Okay. So this is the beginning of the PUC meeting dated November 6th. It is 3:07 p.m. Members present, I see Bill, Charles, myself, Mike, and Patrick, I'm assuming is there.
He is.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve today's agenda?
Also move.
A second?
Before you,
Okay,
would you be willing to add an item? We have a guest in the room and he'd like to ask a question.
okay, good. We can do that.
Okay, just do that right away. and then-
I'll amend my, don't we have like a public comment period?
No.
Oh, okay, I'll amend my motion to include inviting the guest to ask all his questions.
So amended.
Okay.
Great job, guys. Super efficient. I love it.
Yep. Do they want to make a comment now, or do we
Yeah.
want to start?
I'm happy to wait till the end. I want to
Public
hear
comment?
anything.
Might as well do yours now and then stick around as long as you want.
Okay. Now?
Go right ahead.
All right. Craig, congratulations on your election victory.
Maybe you better introduce yourself.
Oh, Bob Nessheim.
Is that, are you hearing this, Craig?
I'm not sure, the microphone is.
Yeah, I can.
Okay.
We good?
Yeah.
Says he can
Okay.
hear.
Oh, I just came to ask of the PUC, who is responsible for lighting in Grand Marais? Street lighting, downtown lighting, highway lighting, in the sense of, not negative responsibility, but just who has jurisdiction over how large the bulbs are and how bright the light is. The big example that we ran into was when we ran Pincushion D&B, there was always an aura of light to the south and the southwest, and it got especially bright when the hospital did their lighting. And everything got super light and then had to be reduced again. We live on Highway 61. There are very bright lights coming into town along the highway corridor. Lights up the sidewalk in our front yard great, but it also lights up our living room and a good chunk of our house unnecessarily. With Silver Bay having done a Dark Nights festival a few weeks ago, and Grand Marais having a Dark Nights event on the 13th of December, I was just curious who's responsible for the ambient lighting of the city as a whole, and where are the dark sky folks? And there's a contingent of that might come and speak or bring a motion or put some pressure to bear on keeping light appropriate and dark sky friendly. It's become very much a marketing thing. And if we market the city as dark sky friendly, it needs not to be too bright. As you go up trail, obviously it's dark. That's a national dark sky area. But down here, we have a lot of light that probably isn't needed and might detract rather than augment the marketability of the city. No more specific complaint than that. And I was curious, seems to me that public utilities ought to manage public lighting, but if it, goes to the city, as Mike said, then we should bring any concerns there.
Yeah, that's right. And thanks for bringing that up, Bob. The decisions about lighting are city decisions the city council would be responsible for. So questions about where we want to have lighting and not, they get to make ultimate decisions about that sort of thing. In practice, our electric utility staff are the ones that actually do the work on lights,
Yep.
And so there's a cooperation there. But they'd only do the work that is at the behest of what the city council wants to see for lighting. Our typical lighting decisions happen when road reconstruction projects occur or when lights are reaching the end of their life and it's time to talk about replacement. That's typical, and when we're doing big projects, that's how we typically do it. If there are specific individual lights that people have questions or concerns about, they can reach directly out to the city staff, and we can talk about that and make changes without having to necessarily involve policy boards at all. So come to a city council meeting if you want to ask about lighting in general or have a specific program you're hoping that the city will do. If you've got a light or a series of lights that have a particular problem, contact staff directly.
There is no current dark sky policy for the city.
The city doesn't have any sort of dark sky ordinance. The city's practice has been to, when we build things, build them with dark sky
Right.
lighting.
Right.
So, for instance, our new city hall building will have dark sky compliant lighting. The Highway 61 project has dark sky compliant lighting. And we'll continue to do that, leading by example. We don't have any rules that talk about what other people's lights have to comply with yet, other than what's in our zoning ordinance.
Does the dark sky event on the 13th go through the city council?
I haven't been contacted about it, so I'm not aware of any plans for them to
So
meet with the city.
it's just occurring under whatever jurisdiction.
It's something that I know the Chamber and Visit Cook County have been involved in, so
They
I'm not sure
promote
that
it.
we have a role in it right now.
Okay. That was my concern. Thanks a lot.
Great, thank you.
Just follow-up question is, you said that the Highway 61 project has dark sky lighting, but that's not under the city's jurisdiction, right? That's Highway Department, yes?
It's complicated,
Mhm.
but they are our lights to maintain now. So the MnDOT, of course, was involved in the design and construction of them because it's in their right-of-way and they do
Yeah.
have some standards that need to be met.
Yeah.
But for the most part, in the city limits, they allow the city to
Regulate
make
it,
decisions
yeah.
about what the lighting is.
And how are they dark sky compliant? In what way?
The design of the lamp is to point the light down rather than up. The number of them is pretty low. Their brightness level is lower than older designs. Their color is quite a bit warmer than other typical LED designs.
Yeah. Are those one of the lights that you were talking about? Or are those some of the lights that you were talking about? Are they the newer ones?
Well, the newer ones are nice. I took a look at those last week. The ones that catch my attention are the Highway 61 coming in from milepost 8 to 9 into downtown, where it has the very tall arching lights, which are very bright, cover a huge area, and probably unnecessarily light the highway, certainly the surrounding area. That'll probably get more dramatic with the new building up on the Gunflint. You know, the hospital, when they built, they overlit their area. And with now new residential housing going in on Highway 61, probably on the upper side and maybe in the Tom Tabota side, there are going to be more areas of dramatic lighting of parking. And just whether we should be in advance of that and, you know, have a comment in there when the stuff is designed.
Those big tall lights up there date from 2008, you think?
2003.
Or 3, when the highway was reconstructed, so they're older.
But those are the purview of the city or not?
They're our responsibility to maintain. It doesn't mean we necessarily have the authority to make major changes to their design without involving MnDOT.
Yeah.
We have relamped them and certainly could do something like that, but it's not a program that we would expend a lot of money on when we're not at the end of the life of a lamp or changing technologies, and right now they're LEDs,
They
so
were switched to LEDs, so they're gonna last a long time.
Yeah.
they could.
It's just a point that seems to be moving into marketing, and it might be something to pay attention to. That's it. No stronger complaint than that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good idea.
think he's-
Craig, I think we muted you.
Or he muted us.
I asked him, there's a bunch of.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. I can hear pretty good. I just have a lot of background noise behind me right now. It might be disruptive to the meeting, but, anyway. Okay, so moving ahead to, our item on the agenda, our 2025 electric budget and rates. I guess you want me to, well, Mike, you want to just recap the, well, I guess I can recap the paragraph if you guys can hear me okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. The electric fund budget for 2025, some notes here that deal with, what SIMPA is doing, and currently they're not going to be changing the wholesale rates for 2025. They did, however, change wholesale rates that you guys know when we had our last meeting last year. They did go up 10%, around 10% in 2023. And, when we reacted to that with a 2% increase for, 2024. But there are some other adjustments that that they made that we have to take care of. And, one of them is, energy cost adjustment, and maybe Mike can explain how that works, but that is about a $47,000 additional wholesale energy cost to us this year. And they're also changing the way they charge for transmission expenses. This year, approximately $20,000 annually. So that's how we sit as far as how SIMPA is selling power to us, of how they and how we maintain transmission lines. So I guess my question is, what's the energy cost adjustment? How do they work that, Mike?
Yeah, let's start with that. So first of all, we're lucky to be a member of SIMPA, and maybe you should mute your microphone now.
Yeah, okay.
They're a well-run organization. They have excellent staff for operations and for finance, and their financial planning is really, really solid. The rate increases in 2023 were in response to a really drastic market shift that occurred that needed to be addressed mid-year, and they stepped up to do that. And part of it was this one-time rate increase that was unplanned, and part of it was the installation of what they call an energy cost adjustment. It's a tool that's fairly common for electric utilities to use, and what it means is we set a baseline for what we expect the cost of procuring energy to be on a monthly basis, and then as each month comes in and we see the actual costs of procuring energy, we adjust rates to make up, or I'll give credit for that difference.
Would we do that or they do that?
They do that to us. Some utilities will pass those energy cost adjustments on to customers, and so not all the SIMPA cities do that. Some of them do, some of them don't. We decided not to right away do that, and rather let's experience it for a while and see how it manifests in our own budgeting, and we certainly have enough room in the electric budget to absorb that kind of amount. We're talking about a $3 million budget where so far it's $47,000. That's, just over 1%, right? So it's not a deal breaker for us to, and so what SIMPA actually does is they'll look at the year's worth of time and plan ahead, and they've provided us with a spreadsheet that says each month what they have budgeted the energy cost adjustment to be, because they're actually looking and making forecasts that there will be one every month. And their budget for the city is that it's actually going to end up with a few credits these next few months, and with that 47 will come back down a little bit. But we don't know what'll happen because that's just the budget.
So the deal is they set a rate, fixed rate, and then because their purchase costs fluctuate month to month, they sort of tack on this little credit or debit or
Yeah.
to our bill.
So they'll set a rate, and it's, this many dollars per megawatt hour of power is what it costs them to either produce it themselves or purchase it on the market.
Yeah.
And then they'll have a look back where they'll say, okay, well, last month, this is what we said it was going to cost, this is what it actually costs. The difference then, we're going to add to the wholesale bills as
Right.
either an additional charge or an additional credit.
And it's not new. They've been doing this for years?
They just started this in 2023, so it is fairly new.
Oh.
And that's why we haven't just even talked really much about what would it look like for us to add it to our bills where our customers would have to experience it, because we haven't really needed to. The reason that they wanted to do that was because it's the same reason that they had to increase wholesale rates. The price market for energy production went bananas in 2023. And they didn't have any mechanisms in place to help adjust for that other than use reserves to cover the costs. And the agencies that rate you for borrowing, they don't like that sort of, watching your reserves get drained really quickly. And so the rate increase and the energy cost adjustment were tools that were put in place to make sure that SIMPA as an organization has a sound financial backing. And then for us, the decision is, do we want to look at those energy cost adjustments and pass those on to our customers? And you can see that on some bills. I don't know if Arrowhead does it, they might, but it's pretty common to look at a utility bill with electric and see an energy cost adjustment. So, if you look at this $47,000 this year, that's in 9 monthly bills, and we've spent, $1,300,000 already. So it's not like this is a huge amount of our actual bill that this energy cost adjustment makes up for, but it can be, 1 or 2% change that we didn't look at when they said that we're not going to raise our rates this year, wholesale rates. That doesn't mean we're not going to experience a slight increase.
Because of that.
Because of the energy cost adjustment. Yeah, the other piece that's different is their transmission expenses, and I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on this, but just know that there are different costs for them as an organization to pay for transmission for their different members. And for us, the characteristics of those costs are really different than the rest of them. And so the way they charge for transmission is the same way they charge for demand. It's similar, I should say, on our bill. So we're paying on our bill an energy charge for this is how many kilowatt hours we purchased on their peak time, an energy charge for this is how many kilowatt hours we purchased on their off-peak time, a demand charge for this is the amount that we peaked at that they have to have capacity for, and then a transmission charge that's based on a similar demand number. So they are setting that number, what they use for demand. They used to have a particular time when they set it, and since most of the cities are summer peaking, they're concerned about what their peak is in the summer, and they would set it then, but we're not summer peaking, so that's a lower number for us. But now they're not doing that, they're setting it on a monthly basis. And so we have to pay what our actual peak is on a monthly basis in a demand charge, and it's going to cost us a little bit more, as you can see, about $20,000. So even though we're not looking at any wholesale increases next year for rates, we do have some actual increases in our wholesale costs that we need to account for, which is one of the reasons why I'm recommending we have an increase.
How are we looking, so we have a 2024 budget, and it looks like, if you look at it, it would be, what, so roughly expenses to match revenues.
Yeah,
And how are we looking on that?
we're on track. So the 2024 sales revenues, not the actual kilowatt hours, but the dollars we're collecting, are a little bit above 2023, probably a little bit behind what we expected them to be with the rate increase included, but not enough to make a big difference. Our expenses are about what we expect them to be. The biggest element of our expenses, of course, is purchased power. And so when we sell more, that number goes up, but so does our revenue number.
Right.
The rest of the numbers are a little bit easier for us to predict. Of course, the second biggest number is our personnel expenses, and again, those are easy for us to predict. We've got a certain number of staff that work a certain number of hours, so we're not really fluctuating on that very much. And then the supplies and services can fluctuate a little bit more as you look back in time. You can see, for instance, in 2023, we didn't buy a lot of supplies, and that number might actually be higher in 2024. But I don't consider that necessarily an annual like fluctuation that we should worry about on an annual basis, because oftentimes we're talking about purchasing supplies for a project, and it might be tens of thousands of dollars worth of wire and other things, and sometimes we capitalize it, sometimes we expense it, but you can see the number can fluctuate.
Mhm.
So I don't have any concerns about where we're at expense-wise in 2024. I think that the 2025 budget, again, feels pretty predictable to me in terms of what we're going to spend, and you can see it's just over $3.1 million that we're expecting in 2025 to spend. So there's two pieces of that are cash that we use to pay debt payments, debt service itself, which is the interest on the debt payments that this fund is responsible for, and then the depreciation of our assets, which we include that in our expense budget. But all that means is we're collecting rates as cash that we set aside for this depreciation. And we don't have any big debt payments left in the electric fund. So although we need to collect that depreciation at $250,000 for 2025, and we have about $25,000 of interest payments on debt service, I mean, that gives us $275,000, of which we've currently committed $113,000. And so this budget is, just as a break-even revenues and expenses, is currently looking at $160,000 of contribution to our fund balance. And we'll probably reduce that number because I think there will be additional contributions from the electric fund towards the City Hall project that haven't been determined yet. But even so, we're talking about a rate increase for a break-even budget, but it's going to contribute money to our fund balance.
So there's 240 in the depreciation on the front page, 2024 budget, 241,000. That, you're saying it's listed as an expense because it's money that the utility pays out. And in this case, it's paying it out to the...
Itself. It is not money that we're writing a check to somebody. It is a charge that we're putting on the expense side of our balance sheet to account for the loss in value of our assets.
Right.
And so we're collecting rates to cover it, which is a good financial practice. What it means is we're setting money aside to pay for the eventual replacement of those assets
Right, so...
in a fund balance.
And so well, you paid it yourself, but it's the fund balance is increasing.
That's right.
As a result.
And so we'll have those monies available to contribute towards capital projects in the future.
I see. And that fund balance, we don't see a number for that anywhere, do we?
You do not see a number for that. It's about $1.6 million right now. And when we did our rate study a few years ago, it suggested that we wanted to grow our fund balance, that it wasn't high enough, and it needed to be at least 50% of our annual expense. That's where it needed to be, and we're about there now.
Is
So-
that just best practices, or does
Yeah.
somebody, does the state or somebody?
No, there's no rules about
Just
it.
best practices.
I mean, there are folks that it will have an effect on our lives if we want to borrow money. That's one of the things that a rating agency will look at to determine how safe of a bet are we and what our interest rates will be. But it's a best practice that when we hired the folks to help us with the rates, they're industry experts, and this is what they do, and that's a best practice they recommended.
So does that function like a checking account kind of?
It doesn't. I mean, we write checks out of it, right? But the fund balance, it's we don't do cash accounting. We do accrual accounting, which is why we have the depreciation charge on there. And So it is a bit more like a savings account than a checking account where we're setting aside some of that money. We can set a target for that fund balance where we say we're going to take money out of that fund balance and use it to pay some of our expenses rather than rates, for instance. We did that last year because we had a significant debt payment, like a balloon payment at the end of one of our bonds, and so we said, we're going to use $250,000 of our reserves to make that rather than collect $250,000 more in rates. So that's how we can use it, and so I think we're going to have to talk about that next year, over the next year, is, okay, well, do we want to set a new target for that fund balance, and then how do we want to go through this time where we actually have more money coming into that account than the target that we've set it at, and how do we want to do rates along those lines? But for this year, I think it's still a good idea for us to increase rates one more time, just to make sure we've got space for those energy cost adjustments, our new transmission costs, and frankly, still catching up with the 10% wholesale increase from last time.
Sorry, one more question about the fund, the fund itself. Is that within the electric utility only?
Yes.
Okay.
That's right.
And the staffing, I see has increased quite a bit since 2021.
Yes.
Is that because you added staff or?
Yes. So the big change between 21 and 22 is we added another full-time person. Since then, we've also increased wages organization-wide fairly significantly. After COVID, there was quite a bit of inflation that we tried to reflect in our agreements with staff in terms of wage increases. For 2025 budget, a 3% increase is included in there for staff.
And you feel pretty good about the staffing level for the workload as a match to the workload?
Yes, for sure. The 3 is good, and we didn't have 3 in 2021, right? We had 2.
Yeah.
And that was a little light. So what we had in the past, a full-time line superintendent, there was a department head level position, and a journeyman line worker and an apprentice line worker. The apprentice became a journeyman, so then we had a superintendent and 2 journeyman line workers. When the line superintendent left, we tried to operate without a department head. We still don't have a department head in this role. Our journeyman line workers are functioning at some of that level to do some of that decision-making and planning. They don't need the full direction of a line superintendent. And then we had to decide, we want a 3rd person because we just need to have that kind of coverage to have 3 people, is to have 2 of them available at any given time. Do we want to add a supervisor or an apprentice? And we decided, partially based on feedback from our staff, that we wanted an apprentice. And it's that way we're continuing to feed into our system of who's going to be our journeyman line workers that we need. So he'll eventually also become a journeyman with 3 journeymen, but I think those 3 full-time people are what we need right now.
So there isn't at this time plans to hire or promote somebody into a manager position?
No, there are no plans to do that. So we're missing out on some of those functions that a department head would provide when it comes to long-range planning, just personnel management. They don't need a lot of, because they're experienced and capable, and they're really, the top of our workforce when it comes to what we're asking them to do. So we could benefit from it, but it would be expensive and not necessarily provide that same level of benefit.
Charles?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So a motion passes for a 3% rate increase for 2025. I think that's pretty conservative for maintaining our utilities. Looking forward, I think, some other factors I think we're talking about on the back page here, just that crossed my mind with, so we're going to have some multiple new customers coming online in the next, 25, 26, maybe 27, how many years is with the new building that's going on. So that'll be more electricity that we have to purchase and also sell. So we'll see numbers probably change quite a bit, possibly, for electrical use. in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I don't think that we've built that into the 25 budget yet, but I think we will need to in 26, because I think we'll know more about what that load's actually going to look like.
We'll know more in 26 for sure, yeah. Okay.
New customers coming in line, it's a net plus, right? For the budget?
At a certain level, right? It's kind of a step game. So as long as we can absorb the new workload without having to increase staff or equipment, then it's a net plus. When you hit that step where we need another person because of it, then it's a negative for a while. But I think in general, utilities like to increase their sales because it's easier to spread that load over a larger group of people. So my expectation is with just the projects we're looking at, with the new apartment buildings, with potentially a new commercial building downtown, we're not approaching where we'd have to add staff, and it will be good for customers.
Right, because you're building within the existing
Yeah.
system, not having to extend lines or.
Yeah, and it's 3 new transformers, not 100 new transformers.
Okay, any other items anybody wants to discuss? Oh, we should probably touch bases on a couple of things that had happened in the last month, I think. Plugged up sewer line. Want to recap that real quick?
Yeah.
I guess if anybody's.
I'm going to give a quick recap, but I want to also give you a much more detailed one at your next meeting. So we'll start with that Scott's going to be here on a full-time basis starting next week, which is great. It's the reason why we're talking about electric rates instead of water and sewer rates this meeting, because he's, of course, going to be involved in that conversation, and since he's only been here on a part-time basis until now, we just haven't had time to approach it. So he'll be at your next meeting. We'll be talking about water and sewer budgets and rates. We'll also give a much more thorough report on what happened. But in general, there was a overflowing manhole, a sewer manhole, sanitary sewer manhole. A customer noticed and reported it. The report eventually got to us, which is great. This is what we want. We want people, when they notice things, to reach out to folks and tell them. We don't have any sort of built-in monitors that would be able to catch something like this. And so it was terrific that somebody saw it, brought it to our attention. Our staff immediately went down there. They brought in additional resources to help deal with the issue. What happened was there's a plug-in line that goes under Highway 61. The plug appeared to just be gravel and debris. We don't have any explanation of how it got there or how long it took to get there, so we'll have to keep looking at it. We brought in some resources to clean it out. They were successful. Everything's working great now.
Was that part of the new Highway 61? Or was that further east?
It was further east of any work they did underground.
So we can't blame MinDOT.
We certainly can't.
Too bad.
No, there's no smoking gun that we can say, well, that's probably where it came from. So then we're left with a lot of stories we can tell, but really no good data to explain it. So we're not going to try right now. We're just going to look forward and say, it's a spot we need to stay on top of and monitor and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Is it possibly a design flaw? Was it at an elbow or a?
No.
No?
No, we don't, there's nothing about, so when we cleaned the pipe out, we also sent a camera through it, because of course we want to make sure there wasn't a break. That's that's what likely would have caused it, is a broken line where dirt got in. There's no break in the line.
And you went upstream
We did.
quite a ways?
Well, no, not quite a ways, but, there wasn't any material anywhere else either. So when we look inside of a sanitary line, the first place we look is in a manhole, because usually you can see what the problem is just by looking in a manhole. Like, okay, there is something, there's water in this one, there's not water in the next one, there's a problem, right? Then the next thing we try to do is send a camera through the pipe to see the condition of it. So this pipe is one that is connected to an awful lot of customers all the way up the Gunflint Trail in the business park. It's regularly has flow through it. It has not caused us a problem that we are aware of in the past, and so we don't have a good explanation for what happened. So when Scott comes, he'll have a little more thorough report, some pictures, and we can talk about what we've learned in the meantime, too.
Okay, thanks, Mike. With that, anybody else have any other items?
Yeah, I just want to mention one more thing, that I had been at an informal meeting a few weeks ago, and a woman there was complaining about the odor from the sewage treatment plant. And I don't know if others have heard complaints recently about that, but a little unclear when exactly if this is historic or if it was recent, but she was saying, oh yeah, it's terrible, you can't open your windows, and so I don't know if that's come up, and if the city's heard about that kind of thing recently. I had sort of understood that the problem was mostly under control, and
Summer before last, there was an incident,
I
right?
think it was that could have been that overflow situation, because I did smell, I was home that week, and when that overflow was going on, and I could smell some sewer then during that, but other than that, I didn't smell it.
And I can say we haven't received any complaints about it, which doesn't mean it's not happening. And people can feel free and reach out to us if they're experiencing that. It's better for us to know if it's happening, so there's no need, you're not going to hurt our feelings. We want to know if there's a problem so we can try to address it.
yeah. Okay, but anyway, it doesn't seem like there's been people shouting about it, like this summer, for example, that's when it's usually an issue.
Yeah, I had, no complaints got to us, so.
All right. Okay, that's all I had.
Okay, thanks, Charles. I guess with that, we can adjourn.
Thanks, Greg.
Very
Thank
good.
you, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.